The cold, biting wind cut through the empty streets of suburban Boston, sending the faint, metallic taste of blood into the air. Beneath a flickering street lamp, Tom Richardson froze. His hands trembled, not from the cold, but from what lay in front of him. A golden retriever, bloodied and broken, lay curled against the concrete behind a dumpster. Her body was a mess of torn fur and blood, her breathing shallow and ragged. Nearby, a soggy cardboard box held 3 newborn puppies, their tiny bodies shivering in the night. The dog's eyes locked onto Tom's, filled with a desperate determination that seemed to say, "Help them." Time stopped. Tom's heart skipped a beat as he looked down at the dog, who was fighting against death itself to protect her puppies. He had no way of knowing it, but this moment would unravel everything he'd known about life, loss, and healing. The next few minutes would change his life forever. "I don't have enough money for this," he thought, the weight of his savings card heavy in his pocket. It held $2, $473, enough for his critical heart medication, not enough for an emergency veterinary bill. The nearest emergency vet was 20 minutes away, and the mother dog likely wouldn't make it that long. With a deep breath, Tom approached the dog, his legs feeling like lead. He kneeled slowly, trying not to startle her. She lifted her head, her pain evident in her eyes. But her trust in him was clear. Despite the blood, despite the injury, despite the fear, she was trying to protect her puppies. Even as her life slipped away, she still cared for them. Tom reached out a trembling hand and stroked her head gently, trying to calm her. "Easy there, girl," he whispered, his voice hoarse. It had been years since he'd spoken to anything other than himself or the walls. His world had been so quiet, so solitary. Ever since Sarah, memories flooded back. The chaos of war, the loss, the heartache. He could still feel the weight of his fallen comrades, the burden of their memories pressing against him, and the pain of Sarah's absence. She had been the one to pull him from the edge. But now, standing in this alley with a dying dog and her newborn puppies, everything felt fragile. "Come on," he whispered to the dog. "Let's get you out of here." Tom's mind raced. He had no idea what to do, but he couldn't just walk away. He couldn't leave them here to die alone in the cold. He pulled off his thick work jacket and carefully draped it over the mother dog, creating a makeshift stretcher. She didn't protest. She let him move her, and for just a moment, he felt the smallest hint of hope rise within him. The puppies were crying now. One of them, the smallest, with a white star on its chest, opened its eyes for the first time. They locked onto Tom, the fragile creature showing him a trust he didn't deserve. He felt something break inside him, something he had been holding on to for too long. Tom stood up, cradling the injured dog and her puppies in his arms. "We're getting you to the vet," he said, voice cracking. With a deep breath, he began running through the darkening streets of Boston, the cold wind stinging his face, the weight of the jacket heavy in his arms. The decision had been made. There was no turning back now. Welcome to the HeartForce channel, where you and I find more meaning in life through dog stories. Before we continue, please comment below and let us know where you're listening to this video. And if you have any stories about my loyal friend, please share them with us. Tom's heart pounded in his chest as he raced through the quiet streets of Boston, the cold wind biting at his face. The injured dog, her blood soaking through his jacket, rested in his arms, still breathing in shallow, desperate gasps. The puppies, clinging to their fragile mother, whimpered softly as he ran. With every step, he could feel the weight of the decision he had just made pressing harder against him. The fluorescent lights of Dr. Martinez's emergency veterinary clinic flickered in the distance, a faint beacon of hope amid the overwhelming darkness. Tom's legs burned, his chest tightened with each strained breath, but he didn't slow down. Time seemed to stretch as he reached the clinic doors, slamming them open with a force he hadn't used in years. The night receptionist, Jenny Carter, jumped to her feet in surprise, her eyes widening when she saw Tom, covered in blood, holding the dying dog and her puppies. "She's dying," Tom managed to gasp, his breath ragged from the run. "Hit and run. 3 puppies. Please, help her." Jenny's hand shook as she reached for the emergency phone, her voice steady despite her obvious shock. "I'll call Dr. Martinez." "Hang on." As Jenny dialed, Tom stood frozen in place, his hands trembling. The weight of the dog and puppies in his arms felt unbearable now. His mind was racing. Was this the right thing to do? He'd spent his life carefully controlling his emotions, keeping everyone at arm's length. He couldn't afford to care. He couldn't afford to risk it again. And yet here he was, running through the night, carrying a dying dog and her helpless puppies to a clinic that might be able to save them. Suddenly, the clinic door burst open, and Dr. Emily Martinez emerged from the back, her face a mixture of concern and professional determination. Her warm eyes softened when she saw the state of the mother dog. "Tom Richardson," she said, her voice calm but urgent. "I need to take her into surgery immediately. Her injuries are severe, blood transfusions, internal repairs. The puppies will need bottle feeding around the clock. This is going to cost." Just save her," Tom interrupted, his voice hoarse. "How much?" Dr. Martinez hesitated. "The surgery alone will cost around $3,500. We'll need more for ongoing care, medications, feeding supplies." Tom's hand instinctively went to his wallet, pulling out the card that held his life savings. $2 for 73. It wasn't enough for both his heart medication refill next week and the dog's surgery. The money was meant to keep him alive, not to save a dog. His breath caught in his throat as he stared at the balance in his wallet. He had never felt more trapped in his life. I'll figure something out," Tom muttered, sliding the card across the counter, his fingers shaking. "Just save them, please." Dr. Martinez studied him for a moment, reading the fear and determination in his eyes. She nodded slowly. "We'll do everything we can." Time passed in a blur of activity as the medical team rushed to stabilize the mother dog, whom Tom had started to think of as hope. It felt strange to care for something so fragile, so dependent on him. In all his years, in all the battles he'd faced, he had never once been so deeply involved in someone else's survival. And yet here he was, doing everything he could to save a dog he had met just hours ago. As the minutes ticked by, Tom sat in the waiting room, his hands cradling the small, makeshift incubator holding the 3 puppies. Their tiny bodies were so fragile, their cries weak and pitiful as they snuggled against the warmth of his jacket. Tom found himself bottle-feeding the puppies, his large hands awkwardly trying to hold the tiny bottles, his fingers surprisingly gentle. "Come on, little soldiers," he thought to himself, speaking softly to the puppies. "You can do this." The smallest of the puppies, the one with a white star on its chest, struggled the most to feed, but Tom kept encouraging it, his voice breaking the silence. "Come on, little soldier, don't give up. You've got this." As the night wore on, Jenny brought him coffee and checked on the puppies, offering kind words that Tom barely heard. His focus was entirely on Hope, the dog he had promised to save. Hours passed before Dr. Martinez emerged, her face pale but determined. "She's stable for now," she said, her voice weary. "But the next 24 hours are critical. We'll need to keep her under constant monitoring. She's a fighter, though." Tom nodded, feeling a weight lift off his shoulders, though he knew the battle wasn't over yet. There was still a long road ahead. He could feel the old walls he had built around himself beginning to crumble, piece by piece, with each puppy he cared for, with each moment he spent at the clinic. Later that night, Tom sat by Hope's recovery bed, his mind still racing. He felt something inside him shift, something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. Could this really be the beginning of healing? As the early hours of the morning approached, Tom sat quietly in the waiting room, still cradling the puppies in his arms, watching through the observation window as the medical team worked tirelessly on Hope. He didn't know how to explain it, but something had changed. He was no longer just the silent man in the quiet house. For the first time in a long time, he was needed. The days following Hope's surgery passed in a blur of uncertainty and exhaustion. Each morning, Tom woke up in the same sterile waiting room, his arms stiff from holding the puppies through the night. The comforting sound of beeping monitors mixed with the gentle hum of the clinic's lights. Hope, the once broken dog, was slowly recovering under the care of Dr. Martinez and her team. But Tom knew her battle was far from over. Every time he saw the team working on Hope, he felt a deeper sense of connection to her. She wasn't just any dog, she was a fighter, a symbol of everything he had lost, everything he had avoided. And in her eyes, he saw something he hadn't seen in years. Hope. Real, raw hope. Dr. Martinez had kept him updated daily, but Tom could feel the weight of her words. She's making progress, Tom, but there's still a long road ahead. We've stabilized her, but the next phase is intensive rehabilitation. The cost for all this care is going to be higher than we initially thought. Tom nodded, taking a deep breath as he tried to steady his racing heart. How far will I go for this dog? It wasn't just the financial burden that weighed on him. It was the emotional toll. He had spent so many years building walls around his heart. Sarah had been the only person who had ever gotten through them, and after her death, he'd made a vow to never care again. But Hope, this golden retriever who had been abandoned in a cold alley, was breaking those walls piece by piece. When Tom first walked into the clinic, he had never expected that a single act of kindness would change everything. The quiet, orderly life he had crafted for himself was being undone by a dog in need. And yet, here he was, bottle-feeding puppies, running to the clinic at all hours, giving his last bit of savings to a cause that seemed, at the time, so irrational. But something inside him told him he couldn't walk away. He couldn't let them die. Not on his watch. The next day, as Tom arrived at the clinic, his heart sank when he saw Jenny standing by the door. She didn't need to speak for him to know something was wrong. Her face was pale, her expression tight with worry. "Dr. Martinez wants to see you," Jenny said, her voice low. Tom's stomach twisted into knots as he followed her down the hallway. He had learned not to expect good news. This wasn't a war zone. It was a battle of a different kind. But the fear was the same. The uncertainty, the waiting. Dr. Martinez was standing outside Hope's recovery room, her arms crossed, her face serious. As soon as she saw Tom, her posture softened, but there was a quiet urgency in her eyes. "Tom," she began, "I need to talk to you about Hope's condition. She's improving, yes, but we've run into a new complication. Her blood pressure has dropped dangerously low. We need to continue intensive care, but the cost of these treatments, well, it's higher than we anticipated." Tom's chest tightened. He felt the familiar, gnawing fear of financial ruin creeping up his spine. The $2,473 he had left was already gone, spent on the initial surgery, on medications for Hope, on feeding supplies for the puppies. His heart medication was due to be refilled in a matter of days, and without it, he could feel the pounding of his damaged heart in his chest. His thoughts raced, but he forced them back. He couldn't think about himself. Not now. Not when Hope was still in need. She had no one else. He had promised her, hadn't he? He promised to keep her alive. "I won't break that promise." "How much more?" Tom asked, his voice tight. Dr. Martinez looked at him, her eyes filled with empathy. "For the next stage of treatment, including the round-the-clock care she needs, we're looking at a total of $10,000. I know that's a lot, but we have to do everything we can." The numbers swirled in Tom's mind. He was living on borrowed time. Both his life savings and his heart were at risk, and yet he felt something inside him stir, a sense of responsibility, a sense of duty. But this time, it wasn't just to his country, to his unit, to Sarah. This time it was to Hope. The decision weighed heavily on him, but his resolve was unwavering. "I'll find a way." He stood up straighter, feeling the familiar strength of his military discipline returning. "Do whatever you need to do, Dr. Martinez. I'll figure out the money." Back at Richardson's hardware, Tom sat at his desk, staring at the stack of bills that seemed to multiply each day. His fingers ran over the edges of the papers, his mind not focused on the numbers, but on the golden retriever whose life he had promised to save. Tom's phone buzzed in his pocket, and he picked it up absently. The caller ID read pharmacy. He answered with a sigh, knowing what was coming. "Mr. Richardson, we need to talk about your prescription," Howard Peters, the pharmacist, said. "Your heart medication refill is due, but you haven't made the payment yet." "I can't release the meds without payment. You know the system, Mr. Richardson." Tom's mind raced. He needed that medication, or his heart would give out. But he had already given so much to Hope. He hadn't even asked for help. He didn't want to. His pride wouldn't let him. But now he had no choice. "Understand, Howard," Tom said quietly. "I'll figure something out. Just hold off for a few more days." He hung up, his mind clouded. His chest tightened as he thought of the decision he had made. How had it come to this? How had one night, one dog, undone everything he thought he knew about himself? At the clinic, Hope's condition fluctuated. Some days she showed signs of improvement, and other days her vital signs would dip dangerously low. Every time the phone rang, Tom would hold his breath, waiting for the news that could change everything. Dr. Martinez continued to work tirelessly, and as the weeks wore on, Hope began to show glimmers of recovery. Her coat started to regain some of its golden hue, and her eyes, once clouded with pain, began to brighten. But it wasn't just Hope who was healing. Tom was, too. He began attending the veteran support group more frequently, not out of obligation, but because he felt a sense of connection again. For the first time in years, he wasn't just existing. He was living. The community began to rally around him, too. He wasn't just the quiet, solitary figure in the hardware store anymore. He was the man who had saved Hope. The man who had risked everything to make a difference. The days dragged into weeks, and though Hope's condition stabilized, the weight of her ongoing treatment loomed over Tom. Each day that passed, he felt the burden of his choices pressing heavier on his shoulders. The money from his savings had long been exhausted, and while Hope's recovery was a success story, Tom's financial situation was growing dire. He hadn't yet filled his heart medication prescription. That nagging thought followed him everywhere, a constant reminder that time was ticking, that every minute without his meds was a risk. Yet, as he sat by Hope's side late one night, watching her gently rest her head on her paws, her golden fur now gleaming once more, he couldn't bring himself to care. Not in that moment. The silence of the clinic was only broken by the quiet hum of the machines, the soft breathing of the dogs in recovery, and the distant sound of rain pattering against the windows. The puppies had grown stronger with each passing day, their playful energy making Tom's heart swell with pride. The smallest Star had become the most active, constantly darting around, eager to explore the world. Liberty and Spirit had their own distinct personalities, but it was Star's boldness that made her stand out. Tom found himself laughing at their antics, something he hadn't done in years. Hope, despite the trauma she had endured, seemed to take the role of a mother to the puppies with ease. Her protective instincts were as strong as ever, and as the days went by, Tom began to feel a sense of peace he hadn't known was possible. It was as if he were healing through them, through the bond that had formed between them. One morning, as he arrived at the clinic, he found Dr. Martinez waiting for him outside the recovery room. Her face was serious, and Tom felt a sudden jolt of fear in his chest. "Tom," she said gently, "we need to talk." His stomach twisted. "What's wrong? Is she okay?" Dr. Martinez nodded, though her eyes carried a deep, unspoken concern. "She's doing better, physically, but there's been something weighing on me. Tom, you've been pushing yourself so hard. You've given everything for this dog and her puppies, but I can see you're starting to burn out." Tom straightened, his military instincts kicking in. "I'm fine." "No," Dr. Martinez said softly, "you're not, and you know it. You're carrying too much on your own, and it's starting to take its toll. You're not going to be able to do this alone, Tom. You're going to need help." Tom felt a lump form in his throat. The weight of his years of solitude, the years he had spent hiding from the world, suddenly felt unbearably heavy. But this time he didn't push it down. He didn't retreat into himself. For the first time in years, he let someone see him, let someone acknowledge the truth. He nodded slowly, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know what to do anymore." Dr. Martinez gave him a knowing look. "You're not alone in this, Tom. You never have been. But you've been so focused on what you've lost that you're missing what's right in front of you. Your community, your support group, they want to help. They care. And you've been shutting them out." As Tom left the clinic later that afternoon, Dr. Martinez's words echoed in his mind. He had been so focused on surviving, on keeping everything under control, that he had forgotten how to live, how to accept help, how to allow others in. The hardware store had been his refuge for so long. It had been his routine, his safe place, a place where nothing could reach him. But it wasn't enough anymore. Nothing could be enough while Hope, her puppies, and the entire community of people who had begun to rally around him needed more. When he arrived home, he stood in front of his store, the building that had been in his family for generations. His grandfather's legacy, his father's legacy, his own legacy, built on hard work and solitude. But as he stared at the familiar sign, something shifted inside him. It wasn't enough anymore. He needed to give more. He needed to make a difference. That evening, Tom sat down at his desk, taking the papers he had been avoiding for weeks, the papers that held the fate of Richardson's hardware. He had always prided himself on being able to keep things together, to hold onto the past. But the past wasn't where he belonged anymore. With shaking hands, he pulled out the paperwork that would finalize the sale of the store. It was a decision he never thought he would make. But as he looked at the photos of Sarah on his desk, her smile frozen in time, he realized that this was what she would have wanted for him. To keep his heart open, to allow himself to heal, to give back in the way that she had always wanted him to create something new, something that would honor her memory, her mission, and the healing that had come through Hope and the other animals at the clinic. Tom signed the papers, and for the first time in years, he felt a weight lift from his chest. It wasn't the end. It was the beginning. The next day, Tom called Dr. Martinez and told her the news. The rehabilitation center that Sarah had envisioned. Now, it was more than a dream. It was a reality. He had sold the hardware store. The money from the sale would fund the construction of the center, a space where veterans could heal by helping animals heal, just as he had. It would be a place where people like him could rediscover their purpose, their connection to life. It would be a sanctuary, a second chance for everyone. By the end of the week, the news spread through the community. The same people who had criticized Tom for spending his savings on a dog now rallied behind him. Donations poured in, supplies were collected, and volunteers signed up in droves. It was more than just a project, it was a movement. And as the first building blocks were laid down, Tom stood beside Hope, her tail wagging in the bright sunlight. Her once broken body now strong and vibrant. He realized for the first time that everything he had been through had led him here, to this moment, to a place where his past, his pain, his healing, and his future all came together. And it was more than he could have ever imagined. The foundation for the Second Chance Rehabilitation Center was laid swiftly, fueled by the collective determination of the community. As the walls of the building began to rise, so did Tom's sense of purpose. The old hardware store, the one that had once symbolized his need for control and solitude, was now transforming into a beacon of hope, a place where healing and renewal were no longer just words, but tangible realities. Tom spent long days overseeing the construction, his hands now worn with the hard work of building something bigger than himself. He worked alongside veterans, many of whom had suffered in silence for years. Together, they took down the old walls of the hardware store, and in their place, new walls of hope were erected. Dr. Martinez was a constant presence, offering both her medical expertise and her quiet, unwavering support. Hope, now stronger than ever, was there by Tom's side every step of the way. The once injured dog had become more than a symbol of resilience. She had become the heart of the center. Her bond with Tom had deepened in ways neither of them had ever anticipated. And it was through that bond that others found their own healing. One afternoon, as Tom was taking a break from the construction site, he found himself sitting on a bench, watching Hope play with her puppies in the grass. Star, Liberty, and Spirit were thriving, their playful barks filling the air with joy. He marveled at the sight, at the contrast of the dog he had found on that cold December night. Hope's golden coat shone in the sunlight, and her eyes, once filled with pain, were now filled with trust and love. The transformation was nothing short of miraculous. And yet, Tom knew that Hope wasn't the only one who had changed. He had spent so many years locking away his emotions, building walls around his heart. He had convinced himself that he didn't need anyone, that caring for others would only lead to pain. But through hope, through this journey, he had learned that healing came not just from within, but from connection, from love, and from the willingness to open one's heart again. This is what Sarah wanted from me, Tom thought. She wanted me to live again, to love again, even after loss. The grand opening of the Second Chance Rehabilitation Center was set for the first day of spring, and the whole community turned out to celebrate. The transformation of the center, from a simple hardware store to a sanctuary for both animals and veterans, was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. As Tom stood at the front of the gathering, surrounded by the veterans, volunteers, and community members who had supported him, he felt a wave of emotion wash over him. This wasn't just a new beginning for the center. It was a new beginning for him as well. For the first time in years, he felt a deep sense of peace, a connection to something greater than himself. Dr. Martinez stood beside him, her smile warm and proud. Hope, now fully recovered, stood by their side, her tail wagging happily. The puppies, now full-grown, were there too, each of them a living reminder of the journey they had all taken together. As Tom looked out at the crowd, he saw familiar faces: Howard from the pharmacy, Margaret from the coffee shop, and even the local town council members, who had once questioned his decisions but were now among his strongest supporters. The transformation of the community was just as remarkable as the transformation of the center. "Thank you," Tom began, his voice steady but thick with emotion. "Thank you all for believing in me, in this place, and in the idea that healing doesn't come from fighting alone. It comes from helping each other, from sharing our burdens and our victories. This center isn't just for animals. It's for all of us, for veterans who fought to reclaim their lives, for people who have been lost, and for those of us who needed a second chance." He paused, glancing down at Hope, whose eyes locked onto his with a gaze that seemed to say, "We did it together." "This is Hope's legacy," Tom continued. "She didn't just save lives. She showed us how to live again. And now, it's our turn to carry that legacy forward." The months that followed the opening were filled with both challenges and triumphs. The center grew, its mission expanding to include more veterans, more animals, and more opportunities for the community to come together. The work was hard, but it was rewarding. Tom found himself surrounded by people who believed in the center's vision, and together, they continued to build something extraordinary. Tom's health continued to improve, too. With the support of his community, he was finally able to get his heart medication refilled. And though the financial strain of the past year had been immense, he no longer carried the burden alone. His life, once so isolated, was now intertwined with the lives of so many others, people who had found their way to the center and to each other through the healing power of love and compassion. Hope's presence remained central to the center's work. She became a beloved figure, not just for her role in the center, but for what she symbolized: a second chance, a new beginning, and the power of unconditional love. The puppies, Star, Liberty, and Spirit, were certified therapy dogs, and they too became a part of the center's mission, helping veterans and families heal in ways that words could not. As Tom sat in his office one evening, looking at the photo of Hope that now hung on the wall, a reminder of the night everything changed, he smiled. There was a warmth in his chest that had been absent for so long. The walls he had built around himself were gone, and in their place, a new life had emerged. The journey had been long, and there had been moments of doubt, of fear, and of pain. But there had also been moments of joy, of connection, and of healing. Through the love of a dog, Tom had rediscovered his own capacity for love. He had found his second chance. And as he stood up to join the veterans and volunteers gathering for another evening at the center, Tom knew that this was only the beginning. The road ahead would be long, but he was no longer walking it alone. Reflection. In the end, Tom's journey wasn't just about saving a dog. It was about saving himself through the love and trust of a broken animal. He learned to open his heart again, to heal from the pain of his past, and to build something meaningful in the face of loss. It's a powerful reminder that healing is not a solitary journey. It's something we do together. In reaching out to others, we often find the strength to heal ourselves. Call to action. What do you think of Tom and Hope's journey? Have you ever had an experience that led you to heal through helping others? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to the HeartForce channel for more inspiring stories like this one.